Okay, we're gonna get started. If everybody have a seat, I hope. I know it's crowded, but there's plenty of seats. So just a quick, before I introduce our Assistant Commissioner here in a second, welcome and thank you for coming. I know we've had several years of not doing this face-to-face. I'm glad we're back doing that for many reasons. One is to see you, which is important more than on the pool deck, because I know I get on the pool deck, I'm pretty focused on what's going on with my team. Here, hopefully we have a little bit of time to collaborate with each other, talk, and see what we can do to improve our sport, make it even better. So with that, I would like to introduce Assistant Commissioner Mike Book.
Good morning. Holy cow, that's bright. So I'm the new guy. My name is Mike Book. I kind of wear two hats today. One is I oversee swimming. Monica and I both do. Does everybody know Monica Tillman? If you don't know Monica, she's the best there is. Please say hi to Monica. So we oversee swimming and we also oversee officials. So we kind of got both groups in here, which is awesome. Honest truth is I've learned a ton since I've been on the job for about 3.5 months. Monica has taught me a whole lot, and we both are going to learn a whole lot in the sport of swim and dive. So we are newbies to that. We have awesome people around us, and we look forward to making sure that we meet each and every one of you and make sure that your season goes very well, and the best for your kids. So this is pretty cool to have this kind of a clinic going on, and I don't know the history, but I agree with Ron that in person is awesome, and it's great to see all your faces. So I'm going to let them go through the clinic today. Just a quick note for officials in here. Who are my officials in here? Okay, good. So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of where we're at on the officiating side, and that is we started a task force for officiating, and this is for all sports. We had a meeting last week to start talking about now and in the future for officials. And as we all know, the shortage of officials that we have across all sports is a huge concern. And so that task force has started the process of trying to rectify that. And as we move forward, we'll have several meetings as we move forward. Our officials fees committee meeting is on November 14th. And obviously that's when we'll talk about how pay structure is. And so we have a number of things in place and a number of things to talk about in order to make that a better deal. So just a heads up there. And I wish you all the best. Please feel free to reach out to Monica and I by email or phone, or come in and see us at the office if you have any questions or concerns or suggestions or anything like that. I'm open all the time to learning about your awesome sport. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it back over.
Good morning. For all of you that don't know me, I'm Chris Cooper, president of the Swim Association. Just a quick note, I want to do a quick thank you to Scott Cohen. He opens up his doors for this event each year when we can meet in person, and he's very gracious to offer any of the facilities, and we appreciate that opportunity. Also to CHSAA, Mike Book, Monica Tillman, who have jumped into our sport with great enthusiasm and support, and they're wonderful to work with and be here today. Our rules interpreter, Bill Christie, has put a wonderful presentation both morning and afternoon together for us, and I want to thank you for your efforts. And lastly, Richard Huddleston is one of our officials who has graciously offered to record this event for us today, including the afternoon session, I believe, in the pool. Just for the officials, real quick note, I've caught some feedback that you have not received your packet yet with your rules book. If you would so kindly at break, go back to your signature on the registration morning session and put an X next to your email so we can figure out what's going on with that and get you your information quickly. Afternoon session for the swim will be a live dive clinic in the pool, which I think will be real fun and interactive. So I strongly recommend that you show back up after lunch break. There will be a separate sign in for that to see who all returned, but I think it will be well worth your time and effort to get back here after lunch. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our presentation and Bill Christie.
I don't talk much, but sometimes I do. Anyways, the agenda is, as Chris was trying to relate through, we're going to be here together this morning. I know it's a night chart. And then we're going to have a breakout section. Coaches will go down the hall to the lecture hall. And that's where we will go through the bulletin and so forth. That is also where we will do our afternoon session with the NISCA coming in. So that's where we will do that. Officials will stay here until the lunch break. Coaches will come back and join them for the Q&A at the end of the morning session. Then we'll have lunch and go down. For those attending this afternoon, we are bringing in a light lunch for those because our timeline says we're going to be close, where we're going down to the NISCA clinic. So we will have a lunch for those people attending that. And the officials, I know you guys are going to take care of yourselves. And now I'll turn it over to Bill.
Big mistake, Ron. Hi, I'm Bill. I'm your rules interpreter. I have a presentation, which you'll see in a second. And that's really to highlight some key points. We're not going to spend the whole time going through every rule in the book. That would not be good. But the presentation's really as much to keep me on track because I like talking about rules and I would do a lot. So try to monitor myself. We've got time. So coaches, if you have questions as we go through the different sections, feel free to put up your hand. We actually have a mic you can speak into. So we can get that captured, your question. I'll put it down here. But that'll be the best way. Officials, if you have questions, I'm going to ask you to park those until we get to the deep dive session after this. We go into excruciating levels of detail at times, and I don't want to subject our coaches to that pain. I mean that joy. So each year, the Federation puts out a points of emphasis. So it's something we should look at first, probably. And so these are actually listed in your rules book. Let me see a show of hands. Who all's got rules books at this point? Ooh. Okay, if you don't have one, you're going to want one soon. You're going to need one. So reach out to CHSAA if you haven't got Monica. She will fix you up with the rules book. So for this season, pages 98 through 100. First one, sportsmanship. It's really important for us. It's something that the Federation is focusing in on, and Mike's already looking at that because our census down just in the Denver area, we're down 15 officials since the start of COVID. So that's a big deal, really big deal. So this is something we want to make sure, and sportsmanship is a way to make sure we don't lose people because of behavioral type things. So sportsmanship is all about respect for one another and appropriate behavior. And I think we do a good job with that. And it's really a team effort to promote it. I think overall in our sport, it's terrific. And I really thank the coaches, especially because through your leadership and guidance of your team, our competitions, we almost never see sportsmanship level issues. So I appreciate you for that. Okay. So we have a couple rules that apply. So I thought I couldn't miss this opportunity. So rule 361 is on unsporting conduct, and that's not new. It's not changed. So taunting and other conduct type things are included in that, and that applies to coaches, managers, lap counters, contestants, whether they're participating or not. That's who this all applies to. Penalty is pretty bad, so it's disqualification from further competition, and also does include prior swims or dives. So it's a big deal. Okay, good news, we don't see that. If this unsporting conduct gets excessive, we could have a possible ejection. In that case, we'll notify CHSAA immediately after the competition is over, and they'll take it from there. I personally haven't had to do that in years of doing this, so I think that's a goal, is for Bill never have to do this. Okay. Spectators. Now this actually is probably one of our most important or primary concerns that we have. We're starting to see more and more of our spectators jumping into the middle of things that they really shouldn't be jumping in on, and creating an unsporting situation. So Rule 363 is what applies to them. Okay. So basically, how are we going to handle that? Officials, we are not going to be engaging with spectators that are exhibiting this type of behavior. If it's bad, we're going to ask we'll stop the meet, then we'll ask meet management to deal with it, which could be removal from the venue. We have a unique sport because our spectators are often on our pool decks, because that's where they sit. They're on our pool decks helping us out with things like timing or whatever. So unique in that we have this close proximity in most venues. It depends. It depends. Like, thank you. Yeah. Anything else? So, in a dual meet, it may end up being the coach. For the bigger meets, meet director, sometimes facility appoints that. So we're gonna do a better job of making sure it's clear before competitions who's the meet management, and make sure in the unlikely event something happens. Any others? Dive announcer errors. We had them. So last year this got put in the book, gave us some protocols, and that hasn't changed. So Rule 964 is all about what to do in the case of announcer error. Our primary goal is to try not to penalize the diver for this type of administrative error. So, and we have some broad discretion on what we do. There's some specific suggestions given in the book. And so in some cases, we'll just allow them to keep the dive that was announced if that's what they want to do. The caveat to that is we got to make sure that the dive card is still legal. And so if the dive card's not legal, that's not an option. Okay. So, but we will give them the chance to dive the correct dive if they do the wrong one, and a lot of that. So that's what we were doing last year. And so our procedures really aren't changing. Just want to make sure we may force a redive even though they like the one they did. Okay. And Billy. Okay. Good. Leadoff swimmer declarations. That was new last year. That's not new this year, but it's part of our points of emphasis. And so this really applies at all meets. We want you to declare the leadoff at the specified time and place. That's not new. There's no penalty if you miss that. if you don't do that. But we really want that to be done. Certainly, we ought to have it prior to the start of the event. And as always, if you turn in an inadequate card, which means it's not complete, essentially, you would be disqualified from that event. Let's see, what else? Oh, 4 swimmers. So you may have 8 swimmers on your declaration card. There are options. You only get to send 4 to the blocks. Those are the ones we're going to allow to compete. So we can't send all 8 and make a last minute decision. Third swimmer's in the water. Oh, let's change the no. Ooh. Deck space. This is new. Not a new problem. You can see I just have to use a pointer because Richard's got a cool pointer. So that was taken at one of our swim meets last year. No, not really. Not so much. It feels like that sometimes. But our playing, Captain Obvious would say the playing field is different for every venue. And so how do we accommodate for that it depends, just like our first question. So our primary job as officials to be where we need to be to see clearly what we need to see. And so the referees will take time before the competition to identify for each one of the officials what's your jurisdiction, what's your deck position, where do you need to move. All those good things are figured out before the meet. But the challenge to meet management is to try to give us 3 feet of clear path. So oftentimes we're moving from 15-meter to the end of the pool, and if that's not clear, we can't get around and see the 15-meter and then also judge the turns and strokes appropriately. So that 3 feet's important. So that was the minimum recommendation for us. Okay. Yeah. As a referee, we'll talk about this later. We'll make sure that these assignments made and it's communicated so that we really do have on big meets like at VMAC or something, we'll probably have those roped off. It's just really hard to do it when you have 400 or 500 excited people in the venue. That's good. Also, we need to make sure we have adequate deck space for the coaches and competitors. So that's really the deck space point of emphasis. All right. Diving area safety. Okay, real 911. There's a lot of safety considerations, but kind of a couple that are really important is 10-foot distance from the board to the sidewall. That's so the officials don't get wet. No, that's safety. It really is. 29-foot distance from the end of the board to the landing zone. That's important. Yep. So if it's not safe, we're not diving. That's really the approach here. And then we need to make sure we take care of the obstacles like backstroke flags, lane lines, other athletes. So we can't be warming down in the dive well while they're diving. That could get ugly. So these aren't new rules. It's just a point of emphasis for this year. Make sense? Sure. Yeah. Oh yeah. Uh-oh, Richard. Okay. Okay, I'm better now. So we got some real changes. You ready? Good news is there's not a lot of them. There's a list in your book when you have a book on page 2. Good news, there's not a lot, so we won't take too much time with it this season. All right. Non-slip surfaces. Okay, Rule 212. So starting in 2023, January, there's a change there. So this is for pools that are new or renovated after January 1st. So big hint, if you're aware of somebody doing some pool renovations or building you one, make sure you thank them for doing it, but also make sure they know these criteria. Excuse me. By the way, I'm declaring the official end of COVID because I haven't had a cold for 3 years until today. So good news. Good news. All right. So if you're aware of a change, please do inform the project manager so we don't get this, we don't spend the money in vain, and then we can't do it. Or if you prefer, your area director, loop them in and they can communicate, make sure. All right. So non-slip surface, the big change is really this 12 inches, no more than 12 inches above the end of the water surface. That's probably not a big concern because if you were more than 12 inches where you're setting your feet, I think that'd be a real interesting backstroke start. So that's the new rule. Pool markings, those are important, have lots of requirements, width of the line, all that good stuff. I won't read these to you, but if you're involved with a pool change, please make sure you communicate that. These are all listed in your book under Rule 215. Enough of that. Enough of that. That's all the changes. It's amazing. We had so many good ones last year. We were just making sure that we really got a lot of good things. So it's a good year. So each year the Federation has a publication on rules interpretations, which is really helpful. So we appreciate them for that. And I'm happy to share some of those with you today. About this one. Situation 2. That's really, there's 2 rules, 335 and 336, that really apply to this. Nope, sorry, I'm on the wrong. 3-4E. So Rule 34 is the one that really applies in that case. During the 500 free, lap counter is shouting splits, shouting encouragement, shouting, hey, lane 2's ahead of you, get going. Can you believe they would do that? Really? Really? But that's okay. It's all right. We're not going to disqualify him for that. And there's really no physical action going on here, so it's not a problem. And so we know the swimmer can't hear him anyway. But it's, pardon me? Oh yeah, it's stress management. Yeah, you're right, Dwight. All right, 416, situation A. So coach brings us a recording device to confirm a relay exchange that maybe they don't think we officiated correctly. You wouldn't do that, would you? Okay. Well, you might do that, but we're not going to use it. We're not allowed to use it. So you don't have to come do that. So the rule is electronic devices will not be used to verify decisions. All right, situation 1. Actually, it's a 3-part one. 3 rules that all play together to make sure that we get this one called. So coach from B relay prelims on the A relay and finals. Maybe the kid on the B relay, got a personal best and is now one of the top swimmers. Who knows? For whatever reason, they want to make that change. Competitor was listed on both the A and the B as alternates. That's a no-no. It's not new. We've not been allowing that, but I just want to clarify a couple things relative to that. So prelims and finals are considered one meet. So ultimately, you're saying it'd be the same as saying I'm gonna put two entries for one swimmer on the 100 butterfly. We don't do that. Yes. As soon as they swam the B relay, that's their relay. Yep. Great clarification, Rob. Thank you. Okay. Shall? I hear you. I hear you. In my world, shall and must are good words. So I was being nice when I typed this. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in play here. So that would be considered two entries. It also, as I mentioned already, the prelims and finals are one meet, and so we're not we're not permitted to have multiple entries in any event for one swimmer. So, I mean that's the whole reason behind doing that. If you don't have enough kids to swim two relays, then you don't get to swim two relays. Yeah. All right. We got more. Want to do more? Okay. If you insist. Here's the 2-for-1 I was talking about already. Situation 2, Rule 335 and 336 are in play with this one. So let's look at the first one. Swimmer. Oh. My bad. Swimmer for religious reasons wants to swim with a full body suit that has apparent compression. So the compression is a concern. And the referee should allow this to happen. Our book says what we're supposed to do is allow it and then notify CHSAA, rad them out. And the problem is compression is not allowed in our suits, and so that's why we want to. But we would allow, because of religious reasons, for them to compete. But it'll probably be the last time they get to do that. CHSAA will get that. They'll get advice from us, and that suit would probably not be acceptable, and they'll have to get a different suit that does meet our. And it could be material, could be zippers, could be anything that's not allowed on suit would cause this type of a concern. Yeah, no buoyancy, no, none of that. And I would say the answer to that is we're going to allow them to swim, and we'll take that to CHSAA, and it'll probably get cleaned up. Okay. Okay. The question is, what if there was two logos, manufacturer's logos on it, something? And I would say the same same approach would be as if it had buoyancy or anything else, that we'd go ahead and allow them to swim for religious reasons, but then likely it'd be the last time they could swim. Yes. No, that's a different problem. Scott. There's in the book for, where in the heck am I? I'm over here. We define what's allowed under 334B. Those are the requirements that all suits have to have. And so if they miss out on that, we're just gonna notify CHSAA, and we'll advise them what the problem is, and we'll get this corrected offline. But we're not going to stop a religious doing something for religious reasons. Hi. Yeah, no. Yeah, just because it got missed or didn't get called in a prior doesn't really change the fact that a suit's legal or not. So this is all about religious reasons, and I assume we're all gonna act ethically on why the competitor wants to use a unique suit. I'm sure. Just tell the ref. Okay. Yeah, I would say we don't need, CHSAA doesn't need to approve a suit that's going to be used for religious reasons. They may get involved if that suit doesn't meet the requirements for our suit as defined in 334 Section B. Simple as that. There's no book definition for that. Hi, Monica.
For compression?
zippers.
They say it's for religious reasons, you let it go, and you turn it over to Mr. Book at CHSAA. Okay? Plain and simply, it's what the rule states.
Nice. Thank you. Uh,
Sorry for holding you up. I live in a dark world where sometimes some people will try to take a competitive advantage, and just a what if, you show up to the state final, it's the last race, and for religious reasons, I'm gonna wear the Jacob suit that I picked up on eBay, and I break a state record, and we'll turn it into CHSAA later. It could happen.
yeah, Chess will be there, by the way. This dog might not hunt. You know, I think I know most of you already, and I have no concerns that you're going to come to me and say this is a suit for religious reasons. This is an ethical question that I think is academic. Yeah, and officials, we'll deep dive more into this later.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Let's do that, and then let's put out something with some more clarification. Good.
Okay. Action items. I love it. All right. That was part one. Part two. Someone requests a starter to do hand signals, or, you know, maybe they want to have a tapper. Maybe they want to have a artificial hand because they're not blessed with one right now. So the question is the referee going to allow that? And the answer is, if there's written authorization from CHSAA, absolutely. If there's not, we're not going to allow the accommodation. It's a very simple process. So if you want an accommodation, you notify CHSAA. They're very timely on response, and they'll give you written authorization. And that authorization will, in fact, tell us what are we going to allow in terms of an accommodation. And so this process works really well. So just reach out in advance of the competition. If you forget, they're going to miss. They won't be able to have that accommodation. So I'm sorry. Ooh, that one went faster. Cool. Okay. Diving one. Cool. So diver performs 301 with an undeclared standing forward takeoff. They also hit the board on the way down. Ouch. Don't like either one of those two things, by the way. So what the referee should do in that case is notify the table this is a zero dive, but it's not a failed dive under the failed dive definition, and doesn't count as a failed dive for in that regard. Okay. Why are we going to do that? Well, each one of those is a problem, of course, and each one carries a no more than two. And so this is an example of a zero-sum dive. There's actually several more examples in the book for you. And that really matches our practice that we've done all over the years. If we see multiple things in a dive, we're going to take off accordingly. But it's a good clarification. Let's see. Good there? Good there? All right, situation 4. We're in the 8th round of a championship meet, and the diver inadvertently reads the dive for the 9th round. Okay. If the diver does that, So if the diver keeps that ninth round dive, they're going to, in fact, have 3 voluntary dives in the semifinals, which is a problem. So bonus points. How many voluntary dives do you get in the semifinals? 2 dive coaches are on. You only get 2. They can't have 3. Okay. So when we're trying to figure out how to remedy this situation, the referee should not allow this option to keep the 9th round dive, because that's going to be an illegal card. And so we need to come up with a better solution. And we have some pretty broad discretion on how to help out the diver, but we can't allow them to have something that's illegal. And so chances are we would give them the opportunity to do the 8th round dive, you know, assuming they're arrested and can do so. It would be a better solution.
Oh, they didn't declare, that's why.
Did not declare. Yep. Right. You might think we're done. We're not. Some bonus topics. There's nothing new here. There's no changes from last year. Why am I going to cover these? Because these things happen a lot, and we just want to make sure we go into the season refreshed on what the requirements are. We talked about suits already a little bit. Let's talk some more. All right, this is a cool little table, an eye chart if you're in the back row, so you can move forward if you want. But it basically is the table that tells us what things need to be covered, what things don't need to be covered or can't be covered. That's really what the table is all about. I don't want to belabor that because there's not changes, but I will say our protocol would be, if it happens before the start of the race, we'll notify the coach, and there's no penalty if that can be resolved prior to the start of their race. We won't stop the meet for it. So if it can't be remedied, then that would be a disqualification for that event, and they would not be allowed to compete until it got remedied. Second part is, if this is observed after the start of the heat, we'll notify you again, but they'll be disqualified from that event and not allowed to compete again until the situation is remedied. So that's our protocol, and we never, ever on this type of violation talk to the swimmer.
Hey, Bill, are you going to share because I would love to have a printout of that little chart that I could tuck in my clipboard.
Happy to share this presentation with anyone and
Thanks.
everyone.
This becomes if an official is going to not call this, they're going to direct it to a coach. So the male coach is supposed to approach this with a female athlete. I mean, this has been in the news and is a tough decision. And I think you are in a bad position here.
We do
Because we're
have,
going to have some officials that are way different to other officials.
yeah, we'll spend time in our deep dive and try to get calibrated as best we can. But at the end of the day, these are judgment calls, and we're going to do what we can to be as consistent as possible.
Hey,
within
Bill,
the
I have a
rules.
question on the male side. I think female sides, we've been talking that a lot, but male side, wastes are going lower and lower all the time. What definition is waste?
Not legal. Sorry. I have nothing in here on transgender issues. What's your question?
If there is a, I really don't even know how to word it. If there is a transgender student that was born male but wants to swim in the girls, on the girls team, what is the proper attire? Because we've all seen what a man looks like in a female's swimsuit, and it's not pretty, and things can fall out, and it really is. I never thought it would be a problem or that I would even be speaking these words, but it is a problem, and we have a new AD, and we just don't even know where to start with locker rooms, how to change. And now this thing is on the news about volleyball girls getting kicked out of their locker room, all to accommodate one transgender student so that they aren't excluded. And I just don't even know. It's all so new that, but it's going to happen, and it will probably happen at our school. And so I'm a little worried on what we can say, what we can't say. I don't want to end up in a courtroom, but I also want to keep my kid. Well, I mean, that's the reality these days, but I want to keep our children safe. And I don't think that our girls need to be exposed to male genitals hanging out of a girl's swimsuit if a natural born male decides to swim as a female.
So big time complex issue. I think we need to work out with CHSAA on a case by case basis how this is going to be addressed, and our officials are not trained in this, but I think that's how we need to approach it.
Back CHSAA then, and
Yep.
So if you didn't hear, the response was, if you have that situation or think you may, make your contact with Mike at CHSAA and explain so that it can be at least discussed, and maybe we can get a way forward.
Suit that where the suit goes down to mid-thigh.
So USA Swimming has made a ruling on allowable transgender. Can we follow that? I mean, it has to do with years of transition, but it's pretty cut and dried because of the issues with the University of Pennsylvania student and, NCAA records and that kind of thing. So there is something we could reference that's been adjudicated and, debated and so on.
So officials, that would be inappropriate for you to apply the rule code from somebody else to our sport. As I said, we're going to defer that one to CHSAA, and it'll be worked out so that we can handle. I mean, we want an inclusive part, and so we're not going to try to exclude anybody, but it's something that we need to get worked out with CHSAA in advance. Thank you for the question. All right. You thought you were done with suits. Oh, no. One more, just one more. All right. So suits or caps if worn, all of that's in Rule 333. None of this has changed, so I won't bore you more with going through those in detail, but you kind of get one logo. manufacturer's logo, and we see a lot of the twos, and that's not very good. Advertising, no, we don't see a lot of that. Size of the American flag is important. Max size, Colorado flags are not approved on the caps. I'm not going to go through the size matters. What goes on matters. I've got a list of things that's in the book that says maybe on the suit or cap. Or yeah, I guess. I will also say that the league qualifier or state qualifier in the cap was approved at a state meet years ago. And it's been our practice ever since to allow for that. And so if you have a state qualifier, league qualifier, you want to make up caps for that, that's still going to be okay. We're not changing anything here. And we're definitely not changing Rule 337. Even gave you the page number. Prior to the meet, coach shall verify with the meet referee that all competitors are legally attired. You guys have done a terrific job with that. It's really made a big difference, and we appreciate you for it. It's enough with suits, caps. Let's talk about tape. You know what? We don't hate tape. We just want to make sure that we're doing it appropriately within the rules. So the rules are pretty clear. Tape may be used to treat a documented medical condition, and the referee must be presented with authorization letter signed by an appropriate healthcare professional. Here's the list. Hasn't changed. We need the letter. Could be hard copy, could be on a phone, could be on an iPad. We don't care. We want to make sure that we have proper authorization for the tape. Divers can wear tape or wraps for support. And if there's an on-site injury, school medical staff or healthcare professional can apply tape, and that will be good for that session to allow them to compete. If they're coming back for another session tomorrow, get the note. It's really the same deal. You need to get the note. Yeah, I was going to say, if you got a trainer, you got a doctor in the stand somebody that's approved healthcare provider, you should be able to resolve that. That's our protocol. That's how we do it. Ooh. Nothing new on that. Use of electronic devices are not approved, and so wearing a smartwatch would not be okay. Divers or swimmers. Yeah, it's a terrible penalty, easily remedied, but sometimes kids forget. All right. Some guidelines for officiating swimmers with disabilities, could be physical or cognitive. Julie wrote this up a couple years ago. It's so terrific. I just keep it in there because it's really terrific. So we have a requirement that we really do want to include swimmers with disabilities. We just need to get approval from the state CHSAA on what accommodations we can provide. Okay, that's all we need. So that accommodation shouldn't be something that really helps them, gives them a competitive advantage. And there's a lot of examples in the book about things that they might do, but ultimately, any accommodation has to be approved by state association and in writing. So I won't cover all the possible things that we might be able to accommodate. We're going to look to the authorization letter to see what we have to accommodate for the meet, and we'll gladly do that. If you forget and you don't have the letter, we're not going to accommodate. Okay. More examples of things that might be possible accommodations. You can have a copy of this. You can read it if you want. You can look at it in your book if you'd like. Appendix B is terrific. I highly recommend looking at it. So again, who are we going to ask to authorize this stuff? CHSAA. Oh yeah, CHSAA. Good. Some reminders. These are things that come up a lot. So I just want to touch on a few of these really fast. So exhibition, it's up to you if you want to make any or all of your people exhibition. It's not a requirement that you do, but if you chose to for any reason, that's fine. An exhibition swim or dive counts as an individual entry and against the requirement that you can have as individual entries. Exhibition competitors don't count as a team entry for JV, but they do count if the exhibition is in varsity. And that's based on the state of Colorado rule. So a little confusion there, but that's where we are. So exhibition competitors can be disqualified, so they have to do it legally. They can actually qualify for state if they're an exhibition. The only thing they really can't do is score points. Hiding behind you.
No. So what we did last year is Justin went in and authorized each one of those individual times. So we still need to work with Max Preps and Mike and Monica to make sure we're in sync there.
Good point. Thanks, Rob. And Ron? Seating and scoring. Okay, so basically, most every meet needs to be scored. Exceptions are B League or JV League. And you can score those too if you want, but those are the only ones you don't need to score. So invite seating or seating by time is not allowed in varsity dual meets. It would be allowed in JV meets, though, if you'd like to do that. And the coaches have to agree on the scoring we're going to use for that situation for JV meet. But we must have a score kept. And last but not least, reminder is an alternative to the JV varsity format is a two-heat varsity meet where either heat has a chance of getting first, second, third, fourth, etc. So coaches, again, would agree on the scoring or else we'll pick one for you. Make sense? Questions? All right. Last thing, and I just think these are terrific, and the Federation has put together a bunch of courses. Most of them are free. We have some for coaches. We have some for officials. We have some that are for coaches or officials. I think they're terrific. If you're new or you haven't looked at some of these for a while, maybe you want to. And as I mentioned, you don't need to look at the COVID one because I've declared COVID is over. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, Bill, just one statement on that. We did have 2 coaches that notified me they have COVID. That's why they're not here. So, sorry, Bill.
I've
And
been-
there is one more up there, coaches, that we should have added. Safety for swim coaches. I know it's not required in our state, but it's highly recommended by CHSAA. We do have an individual that would provide the in-water training. The book training is online, but if you would like to do the in-water training, let me know, and I can get you in contact with that person to get that certified.
That's good. Thanks, Ron. I've been wrong before. So sorry about that. COVID's still a thing.
And rightfully so, they are not here.
Yeah.
So, take responsibility for that. It's still around with yourself and your families and your athletes. Make sure they know that if they have the symptoms and they get tested, they should stay away for a while. Follow the protocol.
So we have a Q&A session coming up later on this morning. So if you have more questions for me or hard ones for Chris, you'll have another time that we can talk and go through that stuff. Coaches, any other parting questions? Knowing full well after this is a break. All right.
So it is break time.
Thank you, everyone.
There are restrooms by the pool on the backside. Also, if you go out of the auditorium and turn left, you'll see a commons area. There's restrooms over there. Obviously, there's still coffee out there. We'll try to start back up at 1:30.
How many new officials do we have? Cool. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
So we need you. Yeah, we are down some, but we're not down and out. So here we go. How do we go backwards? All right. These are all things we're going to talk about. Chris and I are going to tag team a little bit, and for your sanity, mostly, we're going to do that. Sportsmanship, covered this one already. As a group, I meant every word I said. I added a little box for this, and that's 0 tolerance for disrespect. These aren't, if we have this kind of conduct, these aren't, well, I'm going to give you a warning for cussing out or taunting that person. No, we're not doing that. Okay. Well, I'm sorry for your experience. I will tell you that I've never officiated a meet where I didn't know who I was to go to. Never. So if it's a dual meet, it's a coach. Is that a cop-out?
I think it should be addressed in your coaches and captains meeting, if not prior to that. We are entering a whole new world of unsporting conduct in the swim world. It's something we have never experienced. I can guarantee you that now, the experience I had, there was security on site at our swim meet. And there needs to be, I was asked not to leave without my other officials when I had to remove a dive coach. I wasn't ever afraid, but I think the world And if your swim coach wants to deny it and they're the host team, we can stop that meet and then they forfeit it. That's the ultimate unsporting, and it's an uncomfortable situation in the soccer world. It might be different, but speaking as a longtime officials, and I think the others can agree with us, we've never had to face this. It's uncomfortable for us, but this is why we are addressing it so deeply today, because we need to script our lingo before we walk into these venues now. Just one moment.
You do need a
my
mic.
Yeah, right. My comment to his remark, and probably the maybe segue, is you should never go into any meet without, especially if the meet referee is, introduce yourself to whoever the administrator is. If the coach is your administrator, then you need to be aware of what could turn, because you might still have to call the principal. Some schools don't have coverage for athletic directors at every event. They do assign a teacher or something at every event. And if you're going into a meet without that knowledge, the seconds who come in at, 15 minutes before, but the meet ref, you're there 30 minutes before. That should be one of the things you're scouting when you arrive, is who am I talking to? If it's continued after today's meeting, then it's something we need to address. But going forward, you should make sure you introduce yourself to everybody who's a meet. And if that's not there, then you decide to call her, and you may not run the swim meet. But, that's going to be, that's just how I've always operated.
All right. We pile a lot on the coaches. It is not a problem if that's the meet management if they're the host. It is not a problem, but you definitely need to know who that person is that you're going to go to in the event that things that routinely has never happened, if they start happening, you need to be ready for it. Yep. We have to record your questions, so appreciate it.
Oh, what do you do when your main official isn't on your side and you're getting harassed by the home team and the home coach? What do you do in that situation?
You have a referee.
She's talking the referee. I think that would be correspondence with your district rep immediately following the meet. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, that would be not okay. Better. Confrontation. So we had a wonderful session, the Officiate Colorado Day. And there's a rumor that we may do more of those. Highly recommend it. It was in the middle of the summer, and not a lot of people could attend this time, but it was really terrific and well worth the time. We got some pretty good inspirations and some good advice on a whole bunch of things. Confrontation was one of them. And so I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about it because, as Chris said, if we're forearmed on how we're going to do things, we have a better chance of navigating this new minefield that we're potentially going to run into. So I want to point out communication on the, got a pointer? Use it. Okay. 10% of communication is what you're saying. So it almost doesn't matter what you say, right? Not really. Matters what you say and how you say it. But that's not the whole answer. 30% is your tone, your delivery, and then the whopping 60% of that's left is the nonverbal, the body language, the how you're purporting yourself. So we see some confrontation going on here, and you can definitely see who's not calm and who's calm. Your number one thing you need to do in the case of we're into a confrontation situation is to try to stay calm. I would say it's rule number one because it's really important. If you escalate, it's going to escalate. So we want to stay calm. We want to stay with our rules book, which is going to be the last one as well. And I think that's like, and it's not easy. I get you. But it's really important. And if you're going to be successful, you're going to try to have to keep things calm in the chaos that's ensuing right now. Okay. Second point, excuse me. Second point I'll throw out is, if you make a mistake, it's okay. You need to own it though. So this is not about you being right. It's about doing what's right. So, has anyone not made a mistake? I put my hand up. No, I've made them too. So, you know, you want to learn from it. We want to do what we can to rectify the situation. But if confrontation is over something and it's a mistake you make, own it, and that'll help you. Okay. So, how you respond is a big deal. So we have some tips on that. We wanted to highlight, number one is listen. Listen to the person's concern. And back to the body language. If Chris is giving me some advice in a heated way, I'm looking around. She knows I'm not listening or I'm not fully engaged. So that's a big deal. So listen, truly listen to what their concern is. And you know what? You might want to show some empathy. Not a bad plan. Yeah, I'm sorry. It really does. It really is tough to watch your kid disqualified at the state championships. So a little empathy will go a long way. And then the last thing, or next thing is using a verbal deflector. What is that? It's an example, something like, well, I hear what you're saying, but here's what really happened, or here's what we observed. So making sure they know you heard them, that these are the facts, and probably 90% of the time, that's all it's going to take, assuming you could stay calm. Okay. What if it doesn't? That's where number 4 comes in. It's option time. Okay. You already told them you heard what they said. I got a couple options here. The good one, offer it first. So I didn't have a magic situation, but maybe option 1 is, you know, at this point we need to comply with the rule. This is a disqualification clearly in our rule book, and so you need to go back to your seat and accept that. Option 2, that's the bad one. Continue yelling at me, and I'll turn this over to meet management, and you may be escorted out of the building. I want you to take the first option. Yes.
Okay, so the tips for confrontation, these are just confrontations with coaches, correct? Because we never confront or talk to spectators, parents, student athletes. These are just tips for confrontation with coaches.
Well, I would argue that it's good for life.
It's good. Yeah, it's great for life.
Great for
but
life.
if you are being confronted by a spectator or a parent, you immediately look at them and say, take it to your coach, have your coach bring it to me, period. We do not
We do not converse with angry spectators, period.
Well, that's great.
And I know that there are times when, man, we want to converse with angry spectators. What do we ever? But we can't. Okay.
Go ahead, Scott.
So we are in a time of video everything. And I know video review is explicitly called out in the rule book. But did they talk this summer about how you might handle a coach coming up to you with an iPad that shows that you missed a relay takeoff, or, you know, they've got a photo of the breaststroker, you know, doing a double dolphin? Was there any discussion about how to deal with that other than to say we don't do video review and this is what I saw and I called it like I saw it, and that's
There was no discussion this summer on that regard. Our protocols, our procedures, our rule book is very clear. And so, I mean, that's exactly how we're going to handle it. Okay.
Do you mind one comment?
Never, never.
We have an official that's present today that got confronted last season by a USA official and parent in the capacity of a parent. My analogy was the pool deck is our playing field. And if we all keep that in mind, I know we have a lot of parents running around the pool deck and they're great help. We love the parents' timing. I love the parents, but when it crosses that barrier, our challenge is to stay calm and to explain very quickly to that parent that you are approaching me on my playing field. Please take your concerns to your coach. If you choose not to take your concerns to your coach, I have no other recourse than to remove you from these presence with the administration. If that doesn't get that person away right away, you just don't even go any further with these spectators. That's where we need to draw the line. We need to be strong and we need to be professional, and it can be done. And you can be kind. I get it. You're upset because your kid didn't show up to the block. In your eyes, we should have waited. In eyes, it didn't happen. Cut it short. Be professional. Do not go on with the parent in your face. Does that explain? Does that you understand? Same with an iPad. According to our rules, we do not rely on iPads. Please remove your iPad and yourself from my presence. I need to officiate this meet. If you choose not to, we won't start and we'll have to remove you.
What about the social media posts? I remember a couple seasons ago, maybe it was a coach posted some nasty, snarky comment about officiating between prelims and finals.
That situation is, Monica can speak to that, but I will help her out here real quick because it won't take long. We took it immediately to CHSAA, and this is how I applaud CHSAA and the late Tom Robinson, which I may take a moment to interject. You guys might have gotten patches, and if you got your packet, it was a round patch with a TR. TR stands for Tom Robinson. His legacy and his motivation for working with CHSAA was kindness, inclusion matters. And I hope that you all wear these patches proudly. But Monica, luckily we had an official that was there that saw the post, that saved the post and took it directly. Monica took it directly to Tom Robinson. The official or the coach was removed from the premises for finals. No tolerance, none. So I might add to that as well. We as officials will stay off of social media with our uniforms. Any reference to officiating does not go on social media. Okay, sorry, Bill.
Okay. So the good option, certainly a good option is if they are still excited to send them to the coach. We're done. We're done here. And then bad option is, and meet management's going to kick them out. You're not going to. I wanted to touch on the very last point. Always, always, always follow the rules. You know, it seems like we're all powerful superheroes. Does anyone else watch Marvel? We're not. And if we can stay within the rules, we're not going to make up new rules. We have a whole proven book with rules. We want to stay calm and stay within them. And that's how we're going to guide our behaviors. So we're not going to impose all new rules because of a situation like this. We're going to fall within it. And in our book, it'll go to meet management and they'll be out of there. And let them take care of it. And to Chris's point earlier, you may, I mean, if you have concerns, make sure that you have escorts as you guys leave. It's a good idea. This is never going to happen. But
am I correct in assuming that the referee has an obligation to inform a coach of a disqualification?
you are correct, and you are on my next slide. Thank you.
And with that, I just make an observation that I've experienced that how you describe that violation really needs to be almost verbatim out of the rule book. Because if you state it incorrectly, you open yourself up to, well, you open yourself up to a discussion with that coach about, well, wait a minute, you told me this, but the rule says this. There's a difference. And you know, I've just found that can generate problems. So, you know, point blank, give the rule explicitly from the rule book as the reason. And I'm also assuming that if, back to your earlier slide, your first bullet, that if you make a mistake and it becomes very apparent to you or to the referee that a mistake has been made, that should be corrected on the spot.
Absolutely.
And
that really goes with every interaction you have on violations, whether it's confrontation or not. You know, if we're using our rule book, we're stating the rules clearly, we're stating the penalties clearly. This is your best friend. This is your best friend.
And to Ed's point, show a little humility. Case in point, I carry my rule book on me. And I had a disqualification in last season that I'm like, So I went to where I could and I made darn sure that I was right before I made that call, definitely. It's okay. There's a lot of rules and there's situations that come up that you're like, whoa, what was that? So don't feel like you can't rely on that. You don't want to have it out at every call. But there are situations and critical points in a meet that you want to make sure you make that right call. So take the time, slow things down. Don't be afraid to go back to your Bible, so to speak.
Back to the Bible. Love it.
So if you're like the main referee, the head referee, and if there comes a situation where you really don't know what to do, is it all right to call, like, either Chris or you or, somebody that's kind of higher up just for some help maybe in the situation if.
I would say, is it okay? Possibly. Chances are we're going to be on at meets and not have our phones. I think as one of our newer referees, you've got an officiating crew that can consult with you. You have the rules book. The reason we give annual tests is for you to learn the rules book and where to find stuff. We always have time to get it right. So take some time to get it right. I think the phone a friend is probably a poor option because I just think you'll struggle.
Okay, so we can just like stop the meet then and just say, okay, we have to converse about this. Come here, officials, we all have to talk together about this.
Yeah,
That's perfectly fine.
You see the NFL guys do it every day.
Okay.
I didn't want to talk about football. I'm sorry I brought it up.
I would say I don't mind I have an open line via email or phone when you get out of a meet. Last year I had that experience. I was at a birthday party and I got a call from 2 officials saying, just a heads up, this is what happened. I appreciate those calls because those coaches are going to come at me ultimately. So if I have some leeway of knowing what might happen, I do appreciate it. And then I can get your story, I can find out what happened, and I'm better equipped to answer those coaches. It leads to our credibility as an association, so I appreciate those. And yes, first and foremost, call your area rep. They need to know first and foremost, but this was actually in District 1 when that happened. So good point. Thank you, Julie. So our reps are very well qualified to answer these situations and get involved. And then we as a team may need to come together.
I get a lot of those calls, which I appreciate them as well. And it helps because we want to make sure that we do what's right for the schools and the teams. And sometimes we don't get it exactly right, but we most of the time absolutely do. We're doing the best we can. Okay. All right. I wanted to talk about what if unsporting conduct gets excessive. That procedure's in your handbook, which you can read. You want me to read it? No. Okay. All right. So there's a procedure for competitors and coaches, but ultimately you need to notify the competitor, you need to notify the coach, and make sure they know that, so-and-so is out for the rest of the meet, and they need to make some substitutes if possible on relays, whatever they have to do. Important, notify the table and make sure they know how to deal with it, because this is an unusual situation and not all tables are created equal. So make sure that they know how to remove that person from the meet. After the meet, immediately, and immediately is defined by 8 a.m. the following morning, you need to have in writing to CHSAA what happened. And then the next day, reach out to the athletic director. Let them know what happened. But CHSAA will take it from there. You're not imposing penalties. You're just getting it to the right people to determine what needs to happen. So coach is pretty similar. Notify the coach. They need to leave. Identify who's the new coach. It's a forfeit, as Chris pointed out a minute ago, if there's no one to watch the store. And then notify CHSAA. Same deal. CHSAA will determine what the right corrective action is. Make sense? I would say, we're not going to expect people to carry cards. But But if you have some concern that this person is a capable substitute, I personally don't care if the opposing coach is going to represent that team, as long as, yeah, as an option. But I think, it's just like the religious. We're going to take some things as ethical, and move forward accordingly. Well, the rule's certified, but I'm not going to be checking certifications. And I'm not saying that you should either, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah. So let's just say it's the one of the team captains. That's who we have. They're going to be our coach. I'd question that. But if it's one of their assistant coaches, I'm not probably questioning.
I think we need to keep in mind the safety of the venue and also who are we in it for? Are we in it for ejecting coaches or letting swimmers swim? I would let swimmers swim.
In situations like that too, I think a lot of schools and districts have rules that they have to have a certified assistant coach with them. That a team can't be coached without someone like that. I know when I was a coach, that's what our district had. So, so I think, there might be other schools that are like that too. I'm sure there probably are, just for the safety of the kids.
Athletic directors, if there's an athletic director, they can step in. We've even had where maybe one of the parents on the team is a teacher at the school. We've allowed that. So, I think that our main thing is, of course, number one, safety, but number two, are we going to penalize this team because their coach has been a jerk? Okay. We should try to do everything we possibly can to keep the kids in the water. Okay.
All right. Thank you for that. All right. Code of ethics. I'm going to read all of this to you. No, I'm not. It's in the back of your book. It's in the handbook for a reason. And these are all important. So I strongly encourage you to read that every year. And every year I get reminded of things maybe I could do better. I have a lot of issues though, so maybe you're perfect already, but definitely go through that. These are important, and if you're struggling or have questions about any of these, let me know, let Chris know. We'll talk about it.
And notice the word shall. That means we will do that in case the coach isn't here, but that's serious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are all shalls. Coach has their own shalls on the opposing page. Master the rules of the game. That's a big one. But I'm not going to get into them, I promise. Does anyone want to talk about these? Chickens, okay. Starters, roles and responsibility. There's actually quite a few sections in the book that relate to the starters, roles, and responsibilities. 143, 433, 8.1.1 through 6, and an appendix, Appendix A. So there's a lot. There's a lot in there. If you look in Appendix A, we use the verbal preparatory commands. And the first key point, less is more. extra words in the starting protocol, not approved, not needed, and actually typically not constructive. So we really want to discourage that. I mean, obviously, if you're trying to get the competitor in lane 3 to get their foot moved up to the front of the block, that's fine. But we're not looking for starters that are going, that are overjudging, overstarting. Okay. Their announce event 200 freestyle heat 1. We're gonna swim 8 lanes of the 8 lengths on this race. It's going to be all freestyle timers. Make sure you no, we're not doing that. We're not even saying swimmers take your mark. Who else is there? We all want to be courteous, but backstrokers, please step in. You know, if we say too many words, it's like Lucy on the comic strip. So less is more.
Well, and to that point, no matter what venue a swimmer goes into, they know what they're going to get. It drives me nuts to go to different meets and there's a different starting protocol. It should never be different. So really adhere to that.
So, and this presentation is being made available to all of you, but it's in the book. It's very clear what's expected of us as starters. Yeah, motionless. I'm frozen. If you're going to wait for a field of 10 to be completely motionless, you may wait a while. Or if somebody gets motionless, but they're kind of rocking a little bit, or you know, as long as they're not going into the water, you're probably not going to be as concerned. Stationary means they're on the blocks. They're clearly on the blocks. They're ready to go. Let's send them. Good point. Thank you. Pacemaker for the meet. If you're the starter, how many of you have not started meets before? Okay. So this is for you. You are controlling the pace of the meet. Question is, what's the right pace for the meet? Anybody? Pardon me? Heard fast, consistent. Scott, do you have one?
I said, I think a lot of times it depends on the event and the size of the teams. In the Denver meets in particular, you'll have a lot of kids swimming back to back, and the coaches will come up and ask, you know, can you slow this down? And those meets don't take a long time. If you're down at Regis or Cherry Creek, they're going to have 2 heats. They know what they're doing. Go through fast. That you don't really have to be slow about it. So it depends on the professionalism, I guess, of the kids and the table and everything else. Just be consistent and be empathetic to the situation of the teams and the swimmers.
All good things. I agree. It is a big, it depends. It's my favorite thing. And when you have the mic, you get to say it in as much as you want. It depends. It depends on a lot of those things you're talking about. It really depends on what kind of meet your coaches are asking you to run. And so you work that out beforehand. So if they want you to go fast because we got to be out of here, you'll go fast. If they want you to give kids rest because it's the first meet of the year and 2 small teams, you're going to give them some time. Take them out.
And as a new official, when you are asked to start, don't think it's abnormal to think everything starts moving really fast. And as when I first starting, it was horrible because I was like, oh my God, oh my God. Don't be afraid to take a breath, slow it down, make sure your swimmers are all on that row, because I've started races without swimmers. I should have slowed it down a little. I had a wonderful mentor that coached me along. So just don't be afraid of that as you starting. It's a great thing to do. So as seasoned officials, I invite you all to get these people in the starting position.
And the basic,
That's just kind of a follow-up on the stationary is not motionless and beep versus beep when stationary. Are you saying that, you know, as a starter that you don't necessarily look to see if everyone that is on the blocks is stationary after take your mark? Or are you saying, you know, you should wait until everyone is stationary, and if someone is in motion when you start with the beep, then that becomes a judgment call for a disqualification?
good point. What I'm saying is stationary isn't necessarily motionless. So if somebody's kind of moving their arm or doing something, I don't care. If they're there and they're ready, I'm going to count that lane as good. And absolutely, you're waiting for the field, because your goal is to have a fair start for everyone on that field.
A good point on that is this is a great opportunity for good communication between your starter and the other side of the pool. I always like if I'm starting and if I'm on the other side of the pool, I have communication with my official or my referee before the meet starts. Eye contact is wonderful. So you got somebody that twitches. He starts the meet. I look over at Bill and he's either like, nope, or eh. So you kind of communicate that. It's not a dual confirmation. The referee has the final call, but it's a vote of confidence that yes, it was a false, or no, they just twitched. There's not a problem with that in my world.
One more question, then we'll.
On the movement, one of the things that I like to do, if I notice that a swimmer is moving, I'll tell the competitors to stand up. And then if they fall in the water, that's not a DQ. If you say stand up and they fall in, and then they can get back up and get on the block. Whereas if they're moving and you hit the beep, then you have to disqualify them because it's a false start. And sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes you don't notice and they get disqualified for a false start. But if I see somebody rolling, I typically will say stand up.
Yeah, if they're moving forward as if they're getting ready to go, this is definitely a problem. And so, yeah, that's not the motionless. I'm trying to get you, you know, if they're going, and that's going to be a problem if you ask them to stand and they can't, you know, that's still a problem. Absolutely.
It's a judgment.
Absolutely. Backwards. No, I have concerns with that. I would have concerns with that as well. I'm just talking about the, you know, if you ever get the opportunity to start the state meet, it's the best starting gig you'll ever have because they come down, they absolutely on command. They are ready to go. Send them. That's easy. But we get the newbies that they're afraid to be on the block, and we're asking them to be stationary. That's really the point I'm trying to make. You know, somebody's false starting, they're false starting. And, you know, it's probably not okay to be winding up. Speak slowly into the mic. Hear a lot of folks that are trying to expedite the meet. Take your mark. Take your mark. What did I just say? I'm not sure. Take your mark. You're way better off, and you're probably going to speak a little bit slower than you would normally want to speak. But that message is maybe going across 10 lanes. And so you want to be able to make sure that everybody gets that command, take your mark. When I first learned to start, somebody saying, well, you know, you should never go take your mark. Well, I don't care. Monica cares. Okay.
A cadence should, as Bill just said, not be take your mark. It should be take your mark. Close the door. Close the door. Take your mark. Okay. If you say take your mark, your swimmers are going to go, oh, yike. Okay. You want those swimmers relaxed on that block. Close the door. Take your mark.
And it's something you can practice a little bit before you jump in there. But it's a natural thing to say, take your mark. Natural. You can say all the same tone, you can go down, but make sure you're just clear. This is the command, and it's amazing with a clear command what the kids will do. Just works better. And then the last point I wanted to throw out, and I'll take others if you have them, and that is, don't rush the time when they're on the blocks. From the time you say step up, if you don't get them adequate time, remember we got kids that are kind of nervous up there anyway, and so they're trying to come down, and I'll give them time to come down. Give them time to get set before you say boop. Give them time. It doesn't matter how fast the meet is. I tend to try, if they're asking for a fast meet, I tend to try to, as promptly as possible, get that next heat up on the blocks. But then I'll have the same pace as any meet once they're up to the blocks in order to make sure that they all get a nice fair start. So that's Bill's tips, and we've had some good ones. Is there any other points before we move on? We're going to have
to give Scott his own mic.
Front row.
Trying to get your steps in. No, it's really good for new officials to get experience starting, and I just want to make it clear, the starter is not the referee. You know, if we ask you to start, we're asking you to both be the starter and then become the referee and have the last word. So that's just to coaching up new people to be starting. We're not asking you to like do everything.
Fair point.
Ed?
I've noticed, in particularly with respect to the forward starts, that on the command of step up, more times than not, athletes will take their mark immediately. It's step up and then they go down. Do you usually ask them to stand back up, or do you allow that?
Absolutely allow it. They're in the zone. That's what they want to do. That's good to me.
The only thing that I've done is on junior varsity, and you'll know it. They're nervous as heck when those first meets and they get up there. I will at times take time to say, step down, wait for my whistle, because it's an education for them. They're so nervous, they're just wanting to get on that block. And I think if we train them at a young age that you wait for the whistle, step up, and that's just something I do. I think it helps overall.
Actually, that was actually two different things, and maybe I didn't understand you correctly. Yeah, it's not okay for them to be jumping up there before you invite them. Not okay. But I'm actually happy when the long whistle gets them stepping up. And it will. And that's cool. I'll still say step up because I'm supposed to. But sometimes by the time I get the mic in my mouth, they're already up. Just say that anyway, for fun. Don't want to miss my airtime. Step up. Okay. Enough on that horse. Okay. All right. I put this in there. We talked to the coaches already about it. We've had some issues where somebody didn't have the accommodation information. Your decision's easy. You're really not qualified unless you're Julie and maybe a few others here. You're really not qualified to be determining which are the accommodations we're going to do. So let's just keep it easy. It's a very easy process for that to get done properly. Yes, sir. Yeah, I think if you look at the interpretations, it's exactly what it's saying is, you know, get the accommodation. We'll take it from there.
They're not going to score anyway, so oh well. I know other sports have philosophies on how we call certain things. I know there's been a time where there's a disabled swimmer and there was nothing he could do that was going to make me disqualify him. I was just happy he was competing. So is there a philosophy on this?
Yeah, my philosophy is if it's not legal within our rule code, it's a disqualification. Now, I'm not going to go to somebody with a cognitive disability and say, "Oh, you made a big mistake and I'm going to DQ you." I'm not going to probably do that, but
if you see something illegal, they need to be disqualified. And here's why. Some of these swimmers might only be competing for their high school team. Some of them may be competing at higher levels, national championships, international meets in the Paralympic world. And if we're not disqualifying them here, they think they can do that elsewhere. It's just like the example of if we see it in a dual meet, we have to call it because we don't want that swimmer getting disqualified at state. Same goes for our disabled swimmers. They may not end up at the state meet here, but they may end up somewhere else at a higher level. And if you didn't call that when they're first beginning, they're going to get called at an inopportune time in the future.
Coaches have to do modification
And I think if we disqualify those swimmers, have a little tact and you just go to the coach and it's between you and the coach, that swimmer can believe they swam and they did a great job. Then let the coach handle the disqualification with that swimmer.
Who wants to talk about deck position? Just a few tips, comments. So, number one comment, the center of the little graphic there. There's actually something in the book on this. That's interesting. 421C, referee is going to review the assigned duties to officials for proper meet management. So that's really, it's really the ref's job. Even if you're working with somebody who's been doing this a long time, I want you to make sure you confirm what are their assignments today. What are your expectations for deck position, movement, jurisdiction, all of the things. Make sure that's clear, because we want you to have the meet that you want, and it's really your role as referee to do that. So don't get lazy on this point. Have your pre-meeting with your officials and make sure that's set properly. So if we talk about deck positioning, every venue's a little different, and so we could spend hours looking at all the different venues on how you would do. I think honestly what we want to do is avoid things like one lane getting more officiating coverage than another. We're really looking at trying to have almost a mirror where the official on the 1 through 8 or 1 through 4 is doing the same thing as 1 through or 5 through 8, excuse me. 15-meter mark. So there's usually a 15-meter mark, and it should be marked. A lot of times the referee is going to ask people to start and do the 15-meter mark, and then go and do turns and strokes from the end. What does that mean? When can that person leave the 15-meter mark? Yeah, they won't be there for breaststroke. That's good. What else? When the last head's up. So what is the 15-meter violation? Yeah, so some part of their head has to break before they're past the line. Okay, so that one's pretty straightforward, I think. Jurisdiction is typically half the pool in lanes and half the pool in length. If it's a dual meet, at a larger invite, you may have a few lanes that you're covering, 2, 3, 4, 5 lanes. Whatever the situation, that should be clear what your jurisdiction is and what you're looking at. Relay exchanges. I would tell you that if you're trying to do relay exchanges from partway up the course, you're not going to be able to see accurately some of the relay exchanges. And so for the relay exchanges, especially where our new officials, we want to make sure we want you near the end of the pool. When you're in that position, you're able to see a lot better. Did the feet leave before the hand touched? Make sense? DQs. I mean, I think communicating what are we going to do with DQs, or if you have one, clearly you need to be putting your hand up immediately. And if you don't, it's not going to be called unless the referee is the one that's confirmed the call. So that might be on a test. I don't know.
I think as officials, we've kind of gotten lazy with that hand, but it clearly states if you do not raise your hand, we're not going to call it unless the other referee sees it too.
a fellow official. He told me, because I was scared about putting up my hand as a newer official. This is, I think, my 3rd year officiating. He said, always put up your hand. You can always change your decision before you talk to the table. But as long as you put up your hand, you're good.
Great advice. Great advice. What are we calling? What we see? Not calling what we think we see? Or what we're pretty sure happened? None of those are we calling. And how can you know that this is a call you make? I'm in the right position in order to make that call. If the referee asks me to come down and help with first turns on the first 25, and I don't get back in time to see the turn on this end, I probably shouldn't make a call on whether or not that was a touch on the end wall. Julie.
I'm sorry. Working my duties.
She needs rest, Julie.
I was just going to say, I always know I made the 100% right call when my arm goes up without me thinking about it.
Yeah, it's pretty much a reflex after a couple years of this. So it's a great point.
One other point with jurisdiction, case in point, I was at a league meet. I'm at the end. I've got the 3 lanes closest to me. It just so happened that lanes 3 and 4, backstrokers, both came up heads after the 15-meter mark, which stunned me. And I was like, Julie, up went the arm. I'm going to call both those calls. So although you shouldn't be calling lane 6 because the other guy, but sometimes there's that wiggle room that you have. So be confident in your calls. And I actually had a coach think it was the feet, and the shock in my face, because it's a seasoned coach, must have told him. I'm like, what? I said, go look at the rule book, and we laughed about that. So,
and we should not be making calls from the other end of the pool for the turn in or the start end, because I've seen that happen as well, where we've got officials at the turn end of the pool making a call for not even on their side of the pool, they're on the other side of the pool. So we need to, maybe that's a big thing as a referee, is to be, after this point, let it go to that end. Just so that they're not making calls that should be made by some other official.
I like to consider the term groaners, meaning everybody in the crowd saw it too. If I'm the ref and I have a groaner and I'm on the turn end, or I'm on the start end rather, and there's something that went on in that part of the course, I will hands down make that call. But it's got to be a groaner. It's got to be absolutely obvious, because to Kelly's point, you may not have enough information to make a good call on close calls.
Hey, Chris, to follow up on yours, you called 2 people at the same time. Did you raise your hand 2 times, or do you get one hand and then, okay. Because the coach could theoretically come up and say, hey, you only raised for one of those lanes. You didn't raise for 2. Yeah, I do. I just didn't know if that was required or not, that you have to do a line.
Yeah, I'll forbid. I better do this.
Of course. So we're down on officials, and I know a couple of times in girls' season last year, there were just 2 of us on the deck. How do we accommodate that when there are just 2 of you there? You just can't see everything.
You do the best you can, and only make the calls that you're sure of. It's not your job to do anything else.
Last year, I was referee and starter for a lot of meets, most of them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What happens is the swimmers get spread out, so you're covering yours they're covering theirs. You raise your hand, but there also needs to be some acknowledgement. And sometimes you may not get that acknowledgement till the end of the race. You might have to double raise your hand and maybe use your flash dive card to say, pulls like VBAC and stuff. So you can't be tentative and you may have to double check because I did not see your raised hand. So.
Getting to that point, I normally ask the officials if they see a disqualification to raise their hand and then come and let me know if I happen to be the referee. I may or may not have seen their hand raised because I'm looking here and they're over there. But come and let me know. Obviously, there was a disqualification. We're going to.
Yeah, and big pools are hard, but to that point, to Dwight's point, let me emphasize the fact that if you catch your referee's attention before the start of the next race, that disqualification can be contested. So be sure, slow things down, use your whistle. People on the other end, always wear your whistle. Get our attention, because as a referee, I get tunnel vision, honestly, and I forget about my people on the other end, which I apologize. Don't intend to, so don't be afraid to use your whistle.
Actually, Chris, I think I was going to say that because I think when you are in that starter position or you're in the ref, it is easy to get tunnel vision. So like for me, when I'm doing that, I always try to remind myself to notes to the starter or the referee to look down because you do get forgotten. And it's not purposeful, but you do get forgotten. And sometimes, depending upon what pool you're at, it's hard to get around the corner or hard to get back down. So I always try to remind myself if I'm up there to make sure I at least give a cursory glance down there, like, does somebody need something?
It's part of your role as starter before you send the next one. So if we have two people for this venue, I'd So again, two officials, not ideal. If I have a square pool like this and I have only two people, the start of the race, let's say this is start end. We're both here across, still confirming the start. And then I'd have the starter would man half the pool in all turns. And I'd have the other person who's across from the starter head down and man the second half of the pool and all turns. That's how I would arrange that. And there's no perfect thing that you can do, but I'm going to try not to make get out of jail free for turns or for strokes if possible. That's what I'm going to try to come up with on my arrangement.
I think, and we've all been there, you can see around the corner, you got a breaststroker that has a funky kick, or you think it's a double. If they did it on the first turn, it's probably going to happen on the third turn. So I get down there and I make mental note, I got to get on top of that lane because there's something funky going on. So usually by then they've spread out enough. Well, and some pools are in L shape and you can't do that. Like Hinckley, if I had that situation at Hinckley, I'm not going to be able to put two people on the start end because they could not get to the other. And I don't know unless the starter would do the other end. So that would be an option too.
Okay. Last question.
Yeah, I just want to expand a little bit on jurisdiction and groaners. Let's say you are not a referee and you've been given lanes 1 through 3 and you observe something in another lane that you clearly feel is no question a disqualification. That official should raise their hand for that disqualification, even though it's not in their lane jurisdiction, and then inform the referee. Is that correct?
That would not be what I think is in the book. Outside of your jurisdiction, unless you're the referee, you're not making those calls. I mean, if you put up your hand because it's it's natural to do so, but if I'm the referee, if I didn't see it, I'm not making the call. And this is in fact a good test question. Trying to help you here.
Okay, I thought we had till 11. I'm sorry. This is going to be very quick, but very important. Bill, I don't know how to use this thing. Advance to the next with, which one advances it? This forward? Okay. That way? Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, real quick. I'm not going to belabor these because we are going to make this presentation available. So this spring we attended an Officiate Day by CHSAA and the National. It was actually July. Great book they gave us on 101 tips for better officiating. Just know that officials are needed in every sport. We all have the same struggles. So really quick, we've covered this before. We'll make a mistake. We're human, but be accountable for that. Know the rules. If you know the rules, you're more confident in your calls, and read the situations in those books. I highly recommend that. There's some great situations that you very likely will come across yourself. Be professional in dress and body language. We talked about that early. Set the tone when you arrive to the venue. It leads to your credibility. And the worst thing you can do is call something that didn't occur. And we covered that too. Don't call what you think you saw. And courtesy will always pay off with your coaches, players, and fans. You can be friendly but firm. It can be done. Keep your officiating out of social media and politics. Please, please, please stay neutral. Show no biases. Make no comments that might be construed as bias in any way, shape, or form. We've entered a new world of sensitivity, gender, religion, race. That's not in our wheelhouse, so let's keep it out, okay? And don't take things personal. It's all about applying the rules. So when a coach comes at you, just be like a duck, let it go off, okay? And also practice your script. We all know those venues as coaches. Early refereeing, I had a coach that questioned me on a call. He had every right to question me on that call. But know those calls and be confident. And then you're going to, once you answer them, you're going to do fine. Real quick, there are some modifications to be accepted under the state deck. This is covered in your handbook, so I'm going to slip by it. Please read the handbook and know we've made a few exceptions. We've got jurisdictions last year that had boys season that these officials could not get 6 meets. So we've made a little wiggle room for you guys. So that's good news. Lastly, I got 30 seconds maybe. Huge thank you to Mike Book, who you met today. He serves on a committee that they enacted a few years back, a mandatory scheduled annual cost of living of 2% increase. So all my assigners, be sure you get the fees are stated online and in the book, in the handbook. I highlighted the 3 heats. That's the usual one. So we do get an increase, and it's a great move by CHSAA to try to acknowledge our hard work. So a huge thanks to Mike Book, and we'll continue to fight for that. Okay, Bill, for the annual recertification, go ahead.
we're doing this to get you more familiar with the rules. The questions are intentionally difficult to make you go to the book and find it. All of the rules, and why do we care about that? Because when you're in a meet, you don't want to have to spend 15 minutes to go find the rule that applies to the situation. So this is a big deal, and I get a lot of people say, "Oh, I wish you'd just make it easier." It's like, not going to do it. Sorry. Maybe your next rules interpreter will do that for you. The test should come out, I would say, early next week. Arbiter does a terrific job, but at this point, it's not out yet, and we'll have a couple weeks to take it. But that'll be based on when it comes out, and I know a couple of you are trying to get your books now, so please hurry.
Well, and I'll address that with CHSAA, those of you that haven't. Yes?
There are options. There are options on how the test is going to perform, and so I'm sure normally it's going to randomize the question order, which is a great thing because you get to review 50 questions and make sure you got it right.
It should save your test in the same order, but I'm not sure. We'll have to check with Arbiter. Do you hit save? Okay.
Oh. So I'm gonna try to stop this and say I'll do what I can to make sure that when you go back for your up to 3 times that it's going to be the same test order. I'll try to do that. If I can't, I can't, but I'll try to do that.
Okay, real quick, we have an afternoon session at the pool, in the pool, not you specifically, but I highly encourage you to come back for that session. We are going to meet with the coaches here again for our final session, but I just really want to emphasize that you do come back at 1. Trent and Kelly have worked very hard to get a coach here with some divers, that we've got some dives that we want to show you and talk about, and I think it'll be a great open conversation. So there will be an additional sign-in for the afternoon session, so it'll probably be on one of the tables when you come in. So look for that and be sure to sign in. Yes. Okay, those are cards that kind of went by the wayside at COVID, but we're enacting them. CHSAA asks that you fill those out and give to each coach at every meet. What those coaches do with them is not for us to decide. I've seen them in different places, but that's our obligation. So be sure you take those to meet along with the form that we'll probably have available to print. Okay, you guys can take a quick break. Be back here at 11. You got 10 minutes. Yeah, there's a closing session.
Officials, we'll do our last session for this morning. Wow, we got quiet. Okay, last section here is some questions and answers. Questions can come from whatever. Official sessions, the coaching session, the dual session, the joint session earlier today. So we'll try to get this mic to you so you can, everybody can hear that question, and then appropriate person will try to answer. Okay.
Born ready.
He's born ready. Okay, questions? Anybody?
Okay, good. That's lunch. Oh.
The diving situation in the Centennial League was discussed the other day, that it's been a concern, not so much for the girls, but more for the boys. The numbers are down. COVID affected more than just diving. I'm wondering if there is any impetus, or, you know, we need to get aligned on it and try to get some kids involved. And it's not an easy thing. And on top of that, we have a hard time finding diving coaches. So that's a big issue. Just wondering where we are on it, what we can do. Let's keep it going, conversation. And there may be a diving coaches database with phone numbers and emails, contacts. I've spent hours and hours and hours. Fortunately, we've always been able to find the diving coaches, but I know that many teams can't seem to find them. So I know that's a lot to digest there. And maybe that's not a rule issue, but I jumped in.
Okay, one point, and my point to your point is, if we can get that roster of coaches and you do get a dive coach, who updates the coaches roster, and how can we make sure we get dive coach? Because
good question. Well, years ago, I said in the Centennial League, I can't get a hold of you. Who are these people? I'd have to call the AD, and then they'd send a message. So we started a database in the Centennial League, and then we started a diving coach. You know, we had a column for diving coaches. So it really has to start at the league level. You just gather the data, and then at some point, you know, I imagine CHSAA might be able to help, perhaps, maybe not. But certainly the Coaches Association, but that's one more thing for Ron to do, which we don't need to do.
I do have a list of all the coaches and the dive coaches. Whitney, the girl who was in charge before, she had compiled a list from Max Preps. So I do have some of that information, and I did send it out to the schools and the list of coaches that I had. And so they're responding back if they were new or had a new coach. So I do have that list. So if anybody wants to see that list, I can definitely send that to you. Just reach out to me and I'll email it to you.
Great, thank you.
There. Okay, so before you.
So good point, which Monica mentioned, Max Preps. You know, we talked about it, about state entries in your results and everything else. But the main thing that I use it for, and I know CHSAA does, is the contact list. So coaches, go in there, correct the information, add your assistant coaches, add your dive coaches to Max Preps. That's where the distribution lists come from. Okay. And if you don't have access, ask your AD. Your AD can get you direct access to your sport.
That brings up a good point. So for us to locate any coach, that's the best place to do it, including diving coaches, but it depends on if coaches are updating.
That is correct.
Okay, so also in Team Manager, I believe, right? Because we submit. If you haven't done this, you can go into Team Manager and you can put your coaches in there and update your information and phone number and email. That's mostly what I work with. And I think most coaches probably the same. So considering updating that, because I've gone in there and very few times is it updated or accurate.
So Mike is correct. For instance, coaches invite. I can't use Max Preps because they're geared to state qual times. Okay, our times are different. So I asked the coaches to send me a Team Manager entry file. If that data was in there, then we could publish it to those coaches that are at that meet. Say that again. You can list yourself twice.
So I think part of the problem you were talking to, Mike, is in Colorado Springs area, we have the challenge. We have more swim and dive teams than we do dive coaches. And so the challenge is the list that you have at CHSAA, or that's existing coaches that already have a job. And I can tell you, there was one season I had 7 different high school teams I was coaching at one time in the girls season. So it's an issue. The key is if you find someone that can coach and can help, make sure everyone else knows that person. Because in Colorado Springs, we have a list of, not a list, but we know of people that used to coach and not anymore. And so you have to reach out to them.
It was referencing at the beginning of your slideshow. There was a rule that said that no officials should use video equipment to make an official judgment on the relay finishes. Is that also going to qualify for diving as well? So no video equipment can be used to clarify the, okay. All right, thank you.
So, but All-American in diving, you have to submit a video, right? So there is times when video is used, but it's not used for judging the officials. It's used for NISCA All-American.
As long as we're on the diving thing, all dive cards that get submitted, just a favor to coaches and referees, we're on the same meeting. I have to review every state qual card. If they're legible, I love it. If the referee has signed the referee's line, I love that even better. And if it's, as long as I can read it all, it's just really important. And there's a spot on your dive cards for the coach's email. If that is legible, it will expedite any questions I have. Last season, I sent a lot of dive coaches back to coaches because I didn't know where to send it or I couldn't read the email. So just a tip that would be a favor and it would make things a lot more efficient. So thank you.
So communication, right, Mike? Communication.
Okay, we got Mike Book is back with us. He stepped out for a basketball clinic. The guy wears many, many hats. Did you have anything you'd like to tell everybody?
I think you can hear me either way, but just wish you the best of luck. Have a great season. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Monica and I, and we'll find the right answer for you.
How many logos on the suit? 1.
How many logos on caps? Thank you.
What? Same on both sides? Different on both sides?
When we speak of legal suits and any calls, as president of CHSAA, I try my best to emphasize consistency in our calls. And I tell our officials all the time, and I think we truly try that. Whatever the first call of the season is going to be the same at the end of the season. We have noticed that state meet brings out a lot of new high-tech suits. Those are a very great concern to me. At one of the boys' meets last year, state meets, I had a little line of like 12 boys waiting to see if I approved of their suit. It was the most wonderful sight I've ever seen because I truly do not want to have to make that call on the block. So I appreciate your efforts as coaches to get that information to us as soon as you can. And we'll do our best to make that call consistently throughout the year.
I think one of the confusions there is the 2 swimming worlds. You know, there's the FINA USA swimming world, and then there's the high school swimming world. So they've been swimming their USA swimming meets with the suit, and it's perfectly legal with the logos. And then they show up to high school and it's not. And I think that nuance needs to be kind of gotten out there.
Yeah, the rule book addresses the FINA mark, but that doesn't, it's not the end all be all. So coaches, be sure you read that rule book. Oh, we got a question. Hold on.
Thank you. Ron, you just said something about two logos with, I'm talking school logo on a cap. It can be different on both sides.
That was a question. I guess I didn't say it as a question. I do the same on both sides, but I have seen different on both sides, on either side.
Let me clarify. That's a manufacturer logo. And the one that we saw at state, just so coaches all know, it was a TYR, tier. The logo size was right, but there were two logos on it. And that was a horrible call to make. So we don't
Two
want
manufacturing logos.
Pardon?
Two manufacturer logos.
Two manufacturer logos.
Thanks. So rule interpretation will be perfect this year, correct? Bill will be, he will not have to do anything except start the race. And Chris brought up a point, on suits. If new swimmer, old swimmer, whatever, they have a new fancy suit that they want to bring in because it's better, faster, stronger, whatever. If you have it earlier than the state meet, check with the officials. They'll tell you what the interpretation is. Try to do it as early as you can so that athlete, if it gets rejected, can go out and get a proper suit. If that's what they need to do.
I've even gotten emails from coaches. I appreciate that as well. So remember, coaches, the logo and the mark is measured off the body. That's important. So make sure you measure it off the body. If you want to send me a picture, you send it with the ruler off the body.
So I'm still mystified by the logo rules. Is that for, I understand the rules. I'm mystified at the reasoning behind it. And is that a national federation thing to have consistency across all sports? Or having two logos on your swim cap doesn't make you swim faster, right? It has no actual effect on the competition. If it's to prevent commercialization of high school sports, that ship has sailed long ago and it has nothing to do with logos. So I'm just curious if anybody's involved at the national level on that.
Our most wonderful voice on the national level is Monica Abilene, who's not here right now, but I think I've had enough discussion with her that I can absolutely answer this with confidence. If coaches want a rule change, it is specifically, I believe, to not commercialize high school swimming. They don't want big swooshes on people's back ends advertising for them. Any rule that you coaches don't like, are not happy with, there's a process to go through to change it. Colorado, Mike can confirm me, is 100% compliant state, and I think we're proud to say that in any sport that we play in high school sports. So if you want to change, you need to do the proper protocols and go through the proper channels.
I can help you. Reach out. There's a process. There's a form. We get to see them every year, and not everything's approved, but the federation will consider them all.
Yeah, and that's the interpretations of rules too. That's why the book is full of situations, right? that's when they went to an interpretation and tried to clarify what they're trying to say. So read those situations. You gain a lot from those.
Hi, I'm Karen. I was new last year and I did all my certifications. Do I have to recertify again this year?
Yeah, her CHSAA certifications. Yeah, with your ADs, they should be sending you a link to your new this year, our schools, and you'll have to log all your certifications and take whatever things you need to do to be available. And rules is one of those things, if I recall. Any other questions?
Concerns for officials from coaches? We're happy to answer.
Okay, we'll give you some of your day back. Have a great afternoon, great day. Appreciate you coming. Those that are doing the officials clinic, when are you starting?
We're starting up at the pool area at 1 o'clock. I already reiterated we'll have a separate sign-in for that. And I mean, coaches, if you want to step in, we're doing a live dive clinic. So we'll be talking about diving.
And so those going to the NISCA presentation workshop, that's back into the lecture hall that we're going to try to start at 12:30. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
I love in person.